Good morning, Hare Krishna. We're going to our morning Bhagavatam class. So, welcome everybody. Now we'll begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we'll begin with the Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, text 12. So, here we go. Tat shadadhana muniyo jnana vairagya yuktaya Pashantyatmani chatmanam bhaktya shuta grihitaya. So, sages, mumaya, who are believing. The word shadadhana, I know some people don't like all this grammar, but shadadhana literally means those who are putting their trust in something. It's not simply those who are faithful, but those who are actively believing, who are actively putting their faith, putting their trust in something. That's the sense of shadadhana. Tat shadadhana munaya. So sages who are putting their trust, who are trusting, who are believing in spiritual reality. Jnana vairagya yuktaya bhaktya shuta grihitaya. So I'll put this into understandable English. These sages endowed with devotion or with bhakti, with real devotion, and that devotion is endowed with knowledge and detachment. In other words, devotion, bhakti, is not merely a sentiment. It is, for example, let's say you love somebody and you love that person because you really know that person. Sometimes we claim, well, some unfortunate people claim they are in love with someone they don't really know. And then, of course, they find out who the person really is, and that's the end of their so-called love. So the question is, was that really love? If you believe you love someone that you don't actually know, do you really love that person? No. What we love is we love an idea in our own mind. And that happens a lot. In fact, I think it happens, I don't want to, well, probably most of the time. Because nowadays people, not serious devotees, but people in general go from one relationship to another very quickly. And they claim they love someone that they don't actually know. So here we're talking about devotion, which is based on real understanding. You love someone because you really know them. And in this case, the person you really know is Krishna. And when you really know somebody and you really love that person, you become detached from other things. In other words, someone who truly falls in love, we can be a little romantic here. If someone really falls in love, they lose their interest in other partners or other possible partners. And that's why if someone's in a relationship with another person and someone, let's say you're in a relationship with someone that claims, I love you, but that person seems to also be in a relationship with other people, then you naturally question that's, their so-called love. If you really love me, why wouldn't you be satisfied with that love? So in the case of Krishna consciousness, real Krishna consciousness, the more we are attached to Krishna, or just the more we understand Krishna, the more we are detached from other things. Therefore, it said here that trusting sages, believing sages who their devotion is based on knowledge, and it's based and because it's real knowledge and real devotion, they're also detached from other things. And another thing about their devotion is, there's 3 qualifications here for real devotion, is that it is based on Shastra. In other words, someone's going to say, I love Krishna, and if you ask that person, well, who is Krishna? They give some bizarre explanation. Krishna is, which that's not really Krishna at all. So here there are 3 qualifications to have true bhakti, true devotion. Number 1, you understand the person you're devoted to. You're devoted to Krishna because you actually know who he is. Number 2, you have real devotion, and that detaches you from other things. Of course, this is gradual. It's proportional. So you may have some devotion and some detachment. And if we get more devotion, we get more detachment. But still, with real bhakti, the detachment should be in proportion to the devotion. So there's knowledge, there's detachment, and the devotion is based on authorized descriptions of Krishna. Of course, you could say, in some cases, in some ways, this overlaps with the qualification of knowledge, but also this has to do with the way you express or practice your devotion. We have a devotional practice which is given to us by Shastra, by scripture, by great teachers like Prabhupada who know the scripture. And so your devotion, your devotional life, your devotional service is consistent with, is accepting of, Hridaya, the scripture. So if you have that kind of devotion, then here's what happens. If you have that kind of devotion, then you actually see, literally it says here, the self in the self. You see the self in the self. Prabhupada translates the Atmani Chatmanam. Prabhupada translates this as realizes that absolute truth. So literally the Sanskrit says, it's talking the plural, the sages, the sages who have all these qualifications, trusting, they have devotion, which is endowed with knowledge, and detachment, and devotion, which is consistent with Shastra. They see Pashanti, they actually see Atmani Jatmanam, they see the self in the self. Of course, the self in the self is Krishna, because it was, if it was about just seeing yourself, you aren't in yourself, actually. You are not in yourself, you are yourself. But the person who is within you in your heart, that's actually Krishna. And that becomes clear also from the following verses that we're talking about Krishna. So that's the first verse of today's class, 1 to 12. And then having said that, Sutta says, atak, therefore. In other words, if you understood the verse we just discussed, you should come to a conclusion about something. And Sutta is himself coming to a conclusion. Therefore, he begins the next verse with the word ataha. So, or therefore, literally from that, atak pumbir dvija sheshta varnashrama vibhagashaha swanusti tasya dharmasya sangsiddhir haritoshana. He wants to talk about the Varnashram system. And why does he want to talk about this? Well, there's an obvious reason. Because Sutta is living within a civilization in which the varnashram system is all pervading. For example, I mean, Varna means your career. Like, what do you do for a living? Your career, your vocation, your profession. And ashram means are you married? Are you not married? Are you engaged? Are you divorced? Well, they don't have that in so much in the Vedic culture, but still, vanaprastha or sannyas, I mean, it is in a sense a divorce, in the sense of divorce meaning separation. So even in today's world, if you meet someone, the typical thing, or if you hear about someone, typical thing to say will be, what does that person do? Or what do you do? Meaning, what's your occupation? Or as you're getting to know someone, naturally, are you with someone? Which is kind of the modern version. People used to say, are you married? But are you with someone? Are you married? Do you have kids? Or someone may say, yeah, I'm divorced, or I'm whatever, separated. So these kinds of questions are universal. What do you do in life? And what about your personal life? Are you married or not? Are you with someone? And so in the Vedic culture, which is very traditional and very strict, of course, strictness comes and goes depending on how a society is degraded or not degraded. But still, in this very conservative, traditional, pre-industrial, ancient Vedic culture that Suta's living in, people really are socially defined by their varna and ashram. It's like a grid. If you want to locate something on a map, you have to know the latitude and longitude, or on a grid, or on a chart. Like there's a vertical axis, and then there's, I don't know if you can see this, because the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. So when you have two different coordinates, you can locate something. And people were located by varna and ashram. And so there's a tendency, as if you know anything about history, even Indian history, people really identified themselves and other people by their varna. Like a Brahmin, I'm a Brahmin, or I'm a king, I'm a Kshatriya, or a queen, or I'm Vaishya, or I own this land, I'm a farmer, I'm a merchant, or someone was a Shudra. And then, are you married? Are you not married? Are you a brahmachari? So even in ISKCON, I mean, look at how, frankly, obsessed some people are with other people's gender. Like, what's your position? Or there are devotees who, let's say, I can be a sannyasi and I can really identify with that, so that I really expect everyone to bow down to me, and I really get angry if people don't show me certain respect. So we can, even in a spiritual society, or society that's supposed to be spiritual, people can get really immersed in their own and other people's bodily position. And that's in a society that's supposed to be spiritual. Imagine if you live in a society that's not supposed to be spiritual, it's just supposed to be Vedic, which for most people, as we even learn in the Gita, didn't mean so much spiritual. You look at the Mahabharata. If you read the Mahabharata, the unabridged Mahabharata, not a Krishnized version, practically hardly anyone in the Mahabharata wants to go to the spiritual world. Everyone, of course, it's a corrupted text, but everyone wants to go to material heaven. Everyone is, and people take very seriously their varna and ashram. So the Bhagavatam is trying to liberate us from the bodily concept of life, so that we can realize our souls, so that we can reconnect to Krishna and go back to Godhead. That's what the Bhagavatam is doing. And even in a so-called Vedic society, people get deeply absorbed in the bodily concept of life through varnashram. They get deeply absorbed in the bodily concept of life. And someone may be very strict in Varnashram, but in the bodily concept of life, which means they're not going to be Krishna conscious. Not really Krishna conscious. So one of the duties, so I mean, consider the Bhagavatam, the challenge for the Bhagavatam. It has to teach us Varnashram. We need Varnashram. For example, there's a verse, Varnashrama, Atatpumbi Dvija Sheshta, I think this is a Bhagavatam verse also. Atatpumbi Dvija Sheshta Varnashrama Vibhagasha Swanustitasya Dharmasya Sansiti Harito. No, that's not the verse I was thinking of. Sorry, but no refunds. Varnashrama Chadavata Purushena Parakpuman Vishnu Raradyate Panta Nanyata Toshakaranam, which means, see if I can find it. Varnashrama Chadavata Purushena. Sometimes you can just find everything. Yes, I did find it actually. This is from the Vishnu Purana 389. So the Vishnu Purana says, Varnashrama Chadavata Purushena, that only a person who is behaving, literally conducting their life, achara, like acharya, varnashrama charavata, only a person who is conducting their life according to varnashram can worship Vishnu. That is the person who worships Vishnu. Varnashrama charavata purushena parak, the supreme person Vishnu. Nanyata toshakaranam. And there's no other way to please the Lord if you don't follow Varnashram. So here you have statements like that, even in, say, the Vishnu Purana, which is supposed to be about Krishna consciousness with a name like that, Vishnu Purana. And yet, I mean, Krishna says in the Gita, Chatur Varnya Maya Srishnam, I have created the 4 Varna system. So clearly, without following, for example, let's say men and women associate and they have no sense of chastity, no sense of, well, this man is married to that woman, or this person, or this boy or girl, they're not married. Or, I mean, if there's no sense of Varna and ashram, it's just chaos. There's moral chaos, social chaos, economic chaos. So society really needs Varnashram. At the same time, when people, as they often do, I might say usually do, become attached to their bodily position in Varna and ashram, the very thing that civilizes them becomes an obstacle to Krishna consciousness. The solution is not to give up Varna and ashram and just become a barbarian. That's not the solution. But the solution is not to ultimately identify with it, or to use Varnashram, to engage it, but with a higher purpose. It's just like that saying that someone should eat to live and not live to eat. So we can't stop eating, but we should eat, as Prabhupada used to always say, to keep body and soul together so that we can do something really important in life. Eating is not an end in itself. It's something that you do so that you can fulfill your higher purpose. So in the same way, Varnashram, it's like that. So here it is said, therefore, Sutta addresses the sages, Dvija Sheshta, best of the twice born. Varnashrama Vibhagasha, by the divisions of Varna and Ashram, the perfection, samsiti, city means perfection or simply success, or it can also mean a yoga city, but when you say samsiti, it means like the full perfection, the real perfection of Dharma. This is literally what the verse says, the real perfection of Dharma, which is very nicely executed according to the divisions of Varna and Ashram. So the ultimate purpose of Dharma, which is nicely executed according to the division divisions of Varna and Ashram, that ultimate perfection is Hari Toshanam, pleasing Hari, pleasing the Lord. Meaning that if you don't please, well, we'll find out what happens if you don't please the Lord in the next verse, I believe. And that holds true for all people, for people, for human beings. The ultimate perfection of well-executed Dharma, according to Varnashram, is satisfying Hari, pleasing Hari. And therefore, and by the way, the next verse is verse 14 of chapter 2 of the first canto. This is the first Bhagavatam verse that I ever memorized. I still remember it. That was in 1969, I think in September, or September, October of 1969. In the Berkeley Temple, I somehow memorized this verse. First Bhagavatam verse. So, Tasmadi Kena Manasa Bhagavan Sattvatang Pati Shotavya Kirti Tavyascha Dhyaya Pujascha Nityada. So, therefore, the sutta is constructing here a logical, you could say, argument or a logical discourse, because remember, in verse 13, it begins with the word atta, so, or thus, and now in 14, again, it begins with the word therefore. So what Sutta is saying is, this is a fact, therefore, this follows. And because that is a fact, therefore, something else is true. So if you just look closely at the Sanskrit here, you see that Sutta is giving a very tight, logical discourse on Krishna consciousness. So because the ultimate purpose is just please Hari, therefore, ekena manasa, with one mind. In other words, complete concentration. Literally with one mind. Ekena manasa. Prabhupada in the verse translates it with one pointed attention. Literally with one mind. Bhagavan Sattvatang Pati, the Lord, Bhagavan, who's the master of the devotees, Sattvatang Pati, Shotavya, is to be heard about. Kirti Tavyascha, and is to be glorified. Jaya, is to be meditated on. Pujascha, and is to be honored or worshipped. Nityada, at all times. So whatever we seem to be doing, or whatever we are doing, whatever else we're doing, in our heart and in our mind, we should really be hearing about Krishna, glorifying him, meditating upon him, worshiping him. You could say, well, how can you be hearing about Krishna? Let's say if you're driving your car, you can be remembering. You can be remembering what you heard about Krishna. Or in your heart, even in your heart, you could be thinking how wonderful Krishna is. That's glorification internally. You can be, and naturally, therefore, you're meditating upon him and you're honoring him. So, nityada, constantly, Prabhupada translates it at all times, constantly, one should be doing this. And then perhaps we'll read one more verse today. Jad anudhyasina yukta karma granti nibandhanam chindanti kovidas tasya ko nakuryat katharati. So here's a nice image, metaphor. By the sword of that steady remembrance, dhya is dhyana, meditation. And anu means steadily, like consistently, constantly. So by steady meditation or endowed, those who are endowed with, equipped with the steady meditation on the Lord, karma granti nibandhanam chindanti, they cut the very knot of karma. So this is a nice image here. Karma, of course, the word is used in different ways. Here it's in the sense of karma, like your karma, your entanglement in actions and reactions. All the things you've done, all the reactions that are coming to you, and those reactions will sort of lead you, almost force you to do other things in some cases, and that will produce more reactions. So it's a trap. It's called granti. Granti means a knot, and nibandhana means literally like the tie, the binding of the knot, the binding of this knot of karma. Those who are kovidas, those who are wise, those who are learned, cut the binding of this knot of karma. They cut it because they are endowed with the sword. They cut it with the sword of this constantly thinking of Krishna, remembering Krishna, how wonderful Krishna is. So endowed with this sword of constant meditation on Krishna, they cut, wise people, smart people, they cut this binding knot of karma. Therefore, tasya ko na kuryat kataratim, who, it's a rhetorical question, meaning like someone's a fool if they don't do this, who would not cultivate attachment to katha, to these narrations about Krishna. So what's really happening here is that Sutta is emphasizing how important the Bhagavatam is. And Sutta has already begun to narrate the Bhagavatam to the sages Naimisharanya, and they themselves, in their questions to him, if you go back to the previous chapter, kept emphasizing how important it is to hear about Krishna. And now Sutta is saying that who would not cultivate attachment to this katha, to this narration, considering that by it one cuts off the binding knot of karma, which is the whole problem in our life, endowed with this sword of constant remembrance. Of course, if we are not remembering Krishna, then we don't really have the sword in our hand, and we're not going to completely sever this knot, and therefore we're still going to suffer. So if someone says, I chant Hare Krishna, why am I unhappy? Why am I suffering? It's because we are not always thinking of Krishna, and therefore, we have maybe like a little junior sword, but it's not hacking through, it's not cutting through completely this knot of karma, and therefore our previous activities are still affecting us. Whereas if we really fix our minds in Krishna, then we actually have the power, the sword of constant remembrance of Krishna, to really cut through this binding knot of karma and be free and happy and achieve our real life. So thank you all for listening, and hope you enjoyed the class, and hope to see you next Sunday. Hare Krishna.